Take me through what was a stunning piece of reporting when it came across last night.
So the thrust of the story is that in the President's Daily Brief, which is the most important intelligence product that the U.S. spies community puts together for the chief executive each and every day, that the coronavirus was being mentioned repeatedly, that it came up at least a dozen times in January and February in various forms. In some cases, it was substantial articles describing the course of the virus, its spread into Europe, the threat it posed politically and economically around the world. In other cases, it was likely just a minor update or a mention because this was something that U.S. spy agencies were tracking very closely across this time.
Greg Miller, there's some terms of art in the reporting, and anyone that sort of followed the Post reporting or the Times reporting after 9/11 might recognize them. This idea of sort of an uptick, the idea that it was in the briefing at the same sorts of levels that an imminent terrorist threat might be at. Can you talk about just how severe this was in terms of the myriad of issues that the intel community briefs any president on?
Yeah, so I think that this increased in intensity over time is our understanding. That early on in January, the reporting was very fragmentary. And it was basically, it looks like something bad is happening in China. We're not quite clear what it is. It looks like a viral outbreak. It looks like China is trying to suppress information about the severity of it. But then in the ensuing weeks, the reporting improves. They start to see more information. Obviously, then they are not the only ones, but they see the spread and the follow-on outbreaks in Italy and in Spain and countries. And it's, I have to emphasize that these reports are just one channel of information that is coming to Trump throughout this period. Of course, he also has entire agencies, cabinet secretaries, and pandemic experts, epidemiologists who also work for the U.S. government, who are also sounding alarms with increasing intensity as we get closer and closer to March.
Well, that's a great point. And if you could just marry up the two pieces, because you and your colleagues have done some of that reporting, the Washington Post and the New York Times have also, I think, shared with readers some of the original source emails from the group called Red Dawn. I mean, this is the intel piece of what is a very crystal clear picture of people inside Trump's cabinet knowing full well what was about to come to our shores.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially as you get deeper into February and you start to see that evidence that there's no way this has been contained in China. It hasn't been contained in Italy, that it is just spilling across multiple borders. And of course, looking back at this period now, it's critical because it's increasingly obvious that February was a very important month where earlier interventions in the United States, and in fact, earlier just attempts to get mobilized, right, to gather basic protective gear for hospitals and healthcare professionals to make sure that everybody is working hand in glove on the development of a diagnostic test. I mean, Trump was asked about what his administration accomplished in the month of February at a recent press conference and really didn't have an answer for that.
It was a memorable moment. I know what moment you're talking about. I want to ask you one more question about the reporting. I mean, we have some of the, because it seems like twin scandals within this one piece of your reporting. One is the failure you just articulated, that they lost this really 8 weeks, that they could have been buying the kind of equipment that would have saved the lives of doctors on the front lines, would have potentially saved more patients. The other side is they were still sucking up to China. Here's some of what the president was saying about China at the time when the intelligence community was telling them something very different.
Do you trust that we're going to know everything we need to know from China?
I do. I have a great relationship with President Xi. We just signed probably the biggest deal ever made.
I just spoke to President Xi last night, and we're working on the problem, the virus. It's a very tough situation, but I think he's going to handle it. I think he's handled it really well.
If you can count on the reports coming out of China, that spread has gone down quite a bit. The infection seems to have calmed down over the last 2 days. As opposed to getting larger, it's actually gotten smaller. China seems to be making tremendous progress. Their numbers are way down.
Greg Miller, at best, it's either a misunderstanding or just a teeny sliver of the picture the intelligence community had to have been trying to paint for him of China.
I think that those kinds of comments are maybe going to be the hardest ones for the president to defend over the long run, because I think that is where U.S. intelligence agencies were ahead of the game and were warning very early, in early January, in fact, that this was a disturbing development in China, and that China was not being forthcoming about what they were facing internally. I think, to be fair, it took much longer for U.S. intelligence agencies and U.S. health officials to understand the magnitude of the threat of this virus. But they understood very early the significance of the outbreak in China, and that China was not being honest about the battle that it was contending with.
Frank Figliuzzi, so much to unpack here in this extraordinary piece of reporting, but I remember hearing from my own former intelligence community sources in sort of around the same time that we were covering impeachment, so in January, February, that what had happened in Wuhan not only could happen here, but would happen here if we didn't take the right steps. And that's obviously unclassified information that was available to anyone reading the Chinese press and European press. I mean, where does the White House think they have any leg to stand on in sort of shrugging their shoulders and saying, who knew? I mean, they knew.
Yeah, so the fact that you were hearing from former associates sources this same thing, can you imagine the level of detail that was being presented in the president's daily briefing? Look, in my career, I've signed off on those components that came from the FBI that made it to the PDB. It's a big deal. Senior analysts are up all night drafting potential components for the brief. The director of the agencies sign off. The DNI signs off. By the time something gets to the president's desk in that PDB, it has been vetted and gone over with a fine-tooth comb, and it is some of the most sensitive information there is. And so some of your viewers might be saying, I don't quite understand the connection between the intelligence agencies and health reporting, but I'm here to tell you that it's some of the strongest, most confirmed information you can get, because it's coming both from electronic sources, from human sources on the ground in other countries who are telling you Chinese officials are very worried about the spread. Here's what we've just intercepted. Here's what the head of their health department is saying. All of that getting presented. And so I don't know what's worse, Nicole, a president of the United States who is ignoring and not even reading his PDB, or one who's reading it and completely ignoring the reporting.
Well, Frank, I mean, let's pull that thread a little bit, because Greg Miller actually reported years ago that the president doesn't read his PDBs, but we know they get read. I mean, Jared Kushner had his father-in-law sort of finagle a security clearance for him so that he could continue to work on Mideast peace or whatever foreign policy assignment he had. We know they get read. I mean, what does it say? To me, it's one of two things. They either read it and didn't believe it, or they read it and lied anyway. And that's the piece of the after-action report, I think, that will paint a lot of people in a very unflattering light.
Right. So when all is said and done, and you made the analogy to 9/11, and boy, I'm having some flashbacks now to 9/11, because if you were in the intel community before 9/11, you knew the chatter was there. Everyone knew the chatter was there among al-Qaeda. Something big was about to happen. So there's too many people who know about this by the time it gets to the PDB. And when we do an after-action report, these PDBs don't disappear. They exist in multiple places. If I were the House and Senate intelligence committees right now, I'd be issuing a preservation order. I don't want these things destroyed. I want them preserved for future study and research. And we have the acting DNI came out with an official statement that said what? Quote, detail of the article is not true. Details of the article is not true. Well, which details? That it was 12 times in the PDB, or was it 10 times in the PDB? That was a core article, or it was an executive summary? What is it that's wrong? Because it's a no-brainer politically for the president to come out, stop all of this discussion, and say, time out. I'm releasing and declassifying the pertinent parts of these PDBs. Here they are. The Washington Post is wrong. But I don't see that happening. That's the smartest thing they could do right now. And absent that, this distrust of anything coming out of the White House is going to remain.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.